Welcome to Rerouted, where we tell the stories of people with unique and windy paths to help give you the tools you need to create a fulfilling career. Today's guest is Dr. Joanne Charles, an English and history teacher at the Wheeler School, an independent nursery through 12 school in Providence, Rhode Island. In our conversation, we discuss Joanne's entry into education plus her experience in the field, her recent acquisition of her PhD, as well as her research on career changes in education, and her reflections on her career thus far. Joanne, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to see you. Great to have you. Could you give us a little bit of like a rough timeline of where you started in your career and what your first real job was and where you're at now?
Okay, where I started in my career, my first real job, oof, uh, I would say my first real job was um my first professional job. Like I did other things
Yeah, of course.
prior
Yeah.
to that. I had like many lives. I was a certified nursing assistant for some
Okay.
time. I did a lot of other things, but I think my first real job was that engineering job position that I was not qualified for. I just went to the interview. Um, I was like, well, like 6 months pregnant. They didn't know I was wearing all black. I had a certification in biotechnology manufacturing and I did really good in the interview. They hired me and that was like my first big girl job. Then I was also in grad school, finishing up graduate school. And while I was doing that, I sort of changed my mind. I wanted to teach.
Okay.
Um, and interestingly, everyone has always told me I would be a great teacher. When I was in the biotech program, where we take some classes that, some students would have a hard time understanding the concepts, and we'd get like a little room in the library, and I would just like be the teacher and break it down and tutor everybody. I was like, "Oh, you make a
hmm
great teacher," but I was like adamantly against it because I was like, teachers don't make no money. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be broke. So that was like a no. And just being a child of it, a child of
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
immigrants, and my parents didn't have a college degree. So
hmm
obviously I was like, I'm on the track to like make some type of money. Like teaching is not it.
Okay.
Anyways, fast forward, I ended up I ended up getting an English degree and I complemented that with like the certification in biotechnology because obviously I love literature, but it wasn't like a viable career. Like, what do you do with an English degree, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and so yeah, so then I went that way. And then I was in graduate school because the thought process was I'm going to work for a biotech company, um, probably on the administrative end. And so let's do that. When I got there, I was great. I was a good student, but it was just like not fulfilling. I
Sure.
didn't enjoy working at that engineering company. I was good at it. I was very good at it, but it was just like not fulfilling. And so eventually I asked my one of my advisors and my professors, I was like, how can I teach like maybe a class, like as an
hmm
instructor, maybe an undergraduate class in English? And that didn't really go anywhere because it was like a smaller college. And
Sure.
so in the end, let's say I went on a tour at Wheeler and I I'm trying to make the story short. My
That's
daughter, I
okay.
want
Yeah.
my daughter was ready to, there's so many backstories that I'm like
No, they're
leaving
good. They're
out.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
That's okay. Yeah.
so yeah, so my daughter, Grace, it was time for her to go to school. She was 3 years old or about to be three. And so I went on a tour at Wheeler and one thing led to the other during the tour. I was like, oh, I like the diversity there here. And so anyways, they made an appointment for her to come back. And when she came back to do her little, I don't know, whatever they did in the lower school back then.
Sure.
So first the parents get a tour, and then after that, they bring in the little kid and they spend some time with them. And so while she was doing that, the receptionist at the time, her name was Joanne. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll wait in my car because it's going to take some time, about like 30 to 45 minutes. And Joanne was like, oh, the director of Unity and Diversity wants to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And so Princess Bomba comes down and we meet. She was like, "Would you like to come to my office?" So she's showing me all the wonderful things at Wheeler. I go to her office, we sit down. She asks me, some questions about myself. In my mind, I am not thinking anything of it. Matter of
Hmm.
fact, if I'm being honest, I was really sold on homeschooling my child. I was like, Wheeler is the only school I'm going to visit. And if that goes down the hill or if I don't like it,
Hmm.
I'm gonna homeschool Grace until I feel like she's ready. And so like I was not even trying to impress. I was just authentically myself.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
a little too much, right? And so she just kind of asked me for my background. We talked about food, we talked about, so I kind of walked her through um, you know, what I've been doing, what I've been up to. And she said, well, what do you have a degree in? And I told her, and then she said, have you ever, because based on the questions that I was asking her, she said, have you ever like thought about teaching? And I
Hmm.
said, uh, kind of, not really.
Hmm.
I mean, this is where I'm at right now. And she said, have do you want to work here? And I was like, she's like, you want to interview? And I didn't know how to tell her no. I was like, okay. Um, and and so she walks me down. So we finished talking. She walks me down and she, I think, tried to introduce me to the head of school at that time. His name was Dan Miller. I don't think we got to meet. And I remember going home that day, so everything was done with Gracie. She met my daughter and she was like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful kid. And yeah, so I remember driving home that day and in the car, I told, my spouse at the time, what happened. And I was like, oh, that was cute. What a cute ride. But I think I'm going to homeschool her. And I put the card that Princess gave me, I just like put it in between the, thing in the car. And um I intended to just go about my life and
Hmm.
continue on. And that was the end of that with Wheeler. And obviously God had another plan for me because like 30 minutes, not even 45 minutes, I don't know, sometime within the same day, I get a call from Miss Bamba
Hmm.
and she says, send me your resume. She said, send me your resume today. You know how
Hmm.
she is. I love her. Um, and I was like, sure. And I was like, well, I'm busy right now, I'm doing whatever, but I will definitely send it to you later on. And
Hmm.
later that day, I sent her my resume again, not thinking anything of it. It was a biotech girly. And I took some time off from the biotech field because well, I shouldn't say the biotech field. I should say the engineering field. But
Okay. Okay.
so I took some time off because I guess I was working with like methylene chloride and all these, you know, potent chemicals. And so like I couldn't be in the lab while pregnant. And
Okay.
so my first pregnancy, they sort of like had this very, real conversation with me. Like, I think you should, take a break, blah, blah, blah. Eventually I obliged and I took a break. When it was time to come back, I was pregnant again, which was like, and I was like, okay, this is not going to be a viable career for me. I can't be out every
Hmm.
time I'm pregos. And so, yeah, so that I ended up not continuing on in that particular job. And I was just like a stay-at-home mom for some time, and I had my own business, and I was in grad school. And so, and my business was in the beauty industry, totally off. But yeah,
Hey,
so
it's great.
later. that day, not later that day. So I sent her my resume later that day. And then sometime after, I got another call and she was like, to come in for an interview. And it was a full day interview where, everyone interviewed you. Miss Henneman interviewed me. The head of school interviewed me. And I guess that went really well. I I got to teach a class as part of the interviewing process. And here I am. I got hired at Wheeler. So it was just like I accidentally stumbled
Yeah,
on it. Um, Other than that, if not, I would have just, I don't know where I would be.
that's really incredible. So you walked in to go on a tour for a school with your daughter, and you walked out with an interview.
With an
Completely.
interview and a job,
Yeah,
and my
yeah,
daughter ends up going to the school, and there's no homeschooling.
yeah.
So
Okay.
it was a win-win.
Yeah, really. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about how you were kind of against teaching, really that perception of like teachers don't make any money. How did you kind of come around to that? How did you get from there to, you know what, I think I'll take this job. Let's do this.
Okay, well, let me see. What was my thought process at the time? My business was doing very well. What sold me was, to be honest, I liked the idea of being in the space that my child was going to be in.
Sure.
I also really genuinely loved the community, the Wheeler community, because again, I was in the space where it's like I wasn't eager. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It was like take it or leave it because my intention was to homeschool. I
Hmm.
just wanted to see if I was going to visit a school, it was going to be Wheeler. I just wanted to see what it was about. And if it didn't sit well with me, I really would not, she would not attend Wheeler and
Yeah.
I would not care to work at Wheeler. But really something struck me during the tour. It was the sense of community, the care, the freedoms students had. I went to public schools. And so like I was accustomed to schools feeling like a prison almost. And
Hmm.
the fact that Wheeler didn't have that. It was bright. It was like welcoming. It was warm. Um, the care that the teachers had, like they wanted to know my religious background, what was important to me. And like one of the things is we don't celebrate Halloween. And I know like teachers were like really careful and caring and accommodating, and they made my child feel empowered and not feel like isolated because, they don't celebrate Halloween. I have to say my son now attends Wheeler. But that's what really sold me. Just the fact that I believed that it was a caring community. Um, the way just watching the teachers, the diversity. I
Hmm.
didn't think there would be much diversity. Ms. Bomba, just seeing how she was this beautiful Black woman, and here she was in this space, and you can sense there was a sense of belonging. Her boys were in the school. So it was really the Wheeler community itself
Okay.
that sold me. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to teach, I would like to teach in a space like this. And so I was okay with like taking a pay cut or whatever because it was like at this point in my life, it was like my kids first.
Hmm.
And so, and then obviously when you have a spouse that, can help
Sure. Yeah.
to make that sort of decision.
Okay. So you're coming into this job now. You don't have any formal teaching experience. How did you grow in your early career to become a better teacher and learn more about uh, what was how to become more effective in your role?
Oh, great question. I actually did. I had five
Okay.
months substitute teaching
Okay.
experience in a public school and so, but essentially, I was what you would categorize as a career changer.
Okay.
And because I was literally changing careers, I was coming from the space of, engineering slash biotech to business,
Hmm.
running my own company, manufacturing my own products,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And then you're coming into the space where it's like, oh, this thing, like I have to teach, right?
Hmm.
And it was interesting because coming into it, they give you this book and they're like, this is what you have to do, 2 essays per quarter.
Hmm.
And, here's Google Classroom. Like they give you like a sort of a vague overview of like, yeah, this is what to do. And I'm like, I'm not certified. And the interesting thing with independent schools is
Hmm.
they hire uh career changers. They hire people who are not certified, but who have experience in their field, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, so when I came in, there was a lot of things I lacked. I didn't understand or even know how to do backwards planning. I didn't know what vertical alignment was. Like all these terms and formal things that like teachers who are certified know and understand. I didn't have that. I was really
Hmm.
going off of intuition and vibes.
Hmm.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know, which is, but it made me such a great teacher. Like intuition and vibes, I feel like should not be underestimated because I didn't know what I was doing. I was willing I wasn't in a box. I didn't feel like, oh, this is not the way teachers do things. So I came
Yeah.
in and I remember like it was awkward because I would, teachers would share some stuff with me and say, okay, we're covering like one of the books, like Their Eyes Were Watching God. And they cover, some of them covered it in 2, 3 weeks. And I was like, how do you cover a book like this so fast? It's
Hmm.
so rich. There's so many things to extract from it. And so like, I wouldn't do lockstep because they're like, it was lockstep. It was like, we're covering this material in this amount of time, and then we're going to move on and cover this. I was like, no, I have to see what my students can handle. What if I need to
Hmm.
stay on something a little longer so that you know, they can really gain confidence and understanding, and maybe they're off, and maybe that day I shouldn't come in with a lesson plan. I should really, check in with them. So there
Hmm.
was that. And then there was the other component of when you come into a school where there's like the sense of close-knit communities. Teachers have been there for a really long time. There's not a lot of turnover. And so like you'll have a teacher and they'll be like, yeah, my cousin had this teacher, my brother had this teacher, my sister had this teacher. And like it's my turn. And it's like nobody knows me. And here I'm coming. And at the time, I was not only a new teacher that their brother, their auntie, and this, their mother,
Hmm.
whatever, like they didn't have any family members that had me. I was also the first Black teacher right, in the English department. And it was
Hmm.
just like everything about me was different. My style of teaching was different. And so I spent a lot of time like playing catch up, finding mentorship, like asking other teachers that were doing things that I liked and asking them, what they thought, asking teachers to sit in on my class. I knew how to teach. I didn't know how to teach by the book.
Hmm.
And that played in my favor. Wheeler did pay for me to go take a course or ordered a course in Providence College or whatever. They didn't just like throw me in there.
Okay.
So I kind of had some some foundation, I
Hmm.
guess, but I knew I was really good at connecting with
Sure.
people and connecting with kids. And so that was my strong point. I knew the material very well. So when we were doing um the book Namesake, I started, I had kids talk about, the difference between assimilation and integration. And I brought in theory, like philosophical theories about
Hmm.
being and belonging, right?
Yeah.
And I was treating it like a college course, I should say. I didn't know
Okay.
that at the time. I was doing Socratic seminars with them. But one thing I started was I was like, community. is important. And so what I did was, and I still do it at the beginning of every class, we bug in, and bug in is code for check in. You say bug in. In the beginning, we actually had a toy bug, but after COVID, it was just like verbal.
Hmm.
So say bug in, and they say whatever. They go on a tangent, and then when they're done, they can talk about their day, their outfit, whatever. And then they say bug out, and it's the next person. And it built a sense of community because kids who are not necessarily talkers,
Hmm.
um, they had to talk, and it didn't feel like an assignment or I'm nervous. And so it lowered the stakes because everybody was so nice in the
Yeah.
buckets. And so the kid that never spoke, you realized was hella funny. And you know what I mean? And you discovered things about people, and my class felt in the end like you finished camp, right?
Okay.
And so there was a lot of things I didn't know how to do like formally, but I learned in the process, and I was burnt out a lot of the times because I was staying after and learning how to construct this thing called a lesson plan correctly. And, but there was a lot of things that were intuitive. And the fact
Mhm.
that like I wasn't there for the paycheck, I genuinely was like, I like this community. And people have always told me that I'm good at teaching. I considered it, but on a college level.
Hmm.
So like I loved it. And in the end, a lot of the things that I got in trouble for, not in
Hmm.
trouble, but like I got reprimanded for.
For sure.
Later
Yeah.
on, there would be
Hmm.
sort of a professional development where like an expert would come and talk like during, those teacher faculty meetings. And they would tell you, yeah, don't let kids just come in and then you just like throw the work at them. They need like at least 7 minutes or 10 minutes to like decompress and just like, so to reintegrate into the, whatever it is that you're doing so they can really engage in the material. So this idea of bug in that people used to look at me sideways for, everybody was like, oh, wow, she was on to something. The way I taught writing, this whole thing of like writing with color and all that stuff, everybody was looking at me sideways for it. Then in the end, it was so effective. Like I had a kid who's now many kids in college now write to me, back to me, and they're like, you literally showed me how to write. And when everybody thought like I was a lost cause, it's like this is as much as I could do because I have like a learning difference or whatever.
Hmm.
So a lot of things that were wrong that I did turned out to be right because I didn't have the theory and the formation.
Hmm.
Um, the that you get when you go through an education program. But then again, like I said, it was really hard because understanding the culture of the school, being different, when students don't fully trust you because it's like you're not
Hmm.
like all the other teachers. You know that, Nick. But but like it's like they're trying to gauge what this is. And then
Hmm.
it takes them time to trust you and you mess up a lot, but you get it right. So it was
Yeah.
a mixture of like, it was, I didn't sleep much. I was burnt out. It was difficult, but it was enjoyable at the same time. But it worked.
Could you talk about some of the best parts that you find about teaching, and then maybe also some of the less best parts? I don't want to say
Best
worse,
parts.
but
The kids. I just love
awesome.
teenagers. Um, oh my gosh. And I think teaching is one of the careers that like the return of investment, the ROI is like fairly like quick, right? Because it's
Hmm.
like sometimes you come in and you're doing what you do and and then mid-year, whether it's like Christmas time where kids are giving you cards or like end of the school year, like the cards, like, and it's just like, oh my gosh, they're like, you are, I've gained so much wisdom and like, you changed my life. I became a better person. And it's like the things, it's like, all the things I've taught you, child. Like, you remember nothing of like that book, really. You remember how it made you feel, and you remember becoming a better person. Like, I remember a kid just saying, like, there's this card, and I still have this card. She was like, 10th grade is the forgotten year. Like, everybody forgets 10th grade, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
10th grade is was my most memorable year. And the year that I've like grew so much. And like seeing kids evolve and become better human beings and better people. And of course, yeah, like you sometimes think it's like of all the things I've talked about this year, you remember nothing. And it's like, no, they do, because it's like
Hmm.
the random emails. It's like, oh my gosh, they were teaching their eyes were watching God in my, class, my college, whatever class. And like, I have the most to say, and, or like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I learned so much about writing, and so like it's like, oh wow, like you are making a difference. And I love that. Like to get to make a difference and to like it's just so fulfilling. I think so that there's that. It's the connection, the return on investment, like watching
Yeah.
great humans come back and just, you know. Um, the least favorite part, grading papers, hands down.
Okay. Don't, even after you want them to learn everything, you want them to absorb everything, you just don't want them to show it to you. You don't have to go back and
You know what it is, Nick? Let me tell
Uh-huh.
you what it is. It's
Okay.
like you want them to write the paper,
Hmm.
but you got, you know what I'm saying? But you don't want to read a crappy paper, you know? So that's like, it becomes a little problematic when it's taking you 2 hours to give Joe Schmo feedback because
Sure.
he didn't follow what his thesis statement said he would, he didn't commit
Sure.
and follow through, and his papers all over the place, and you're like, poor child, I can't just leave you like this. And so like this is gonna warrant a meeting and
Sure.
but yeah,
Sure.
so grading, but then it's also like rewarding to see the evolution of these papers, because sometimes it's really, the term I give students is garbouche. Were you part of the cohort that I was like, we use the
I
word garbouche?
I don't remember, unfortunately. I'm not sure.
Okay. So I think last year and this year or whatever, I don't know, we use the word garbouche. So like if your paper is not up to par, we're gonna call it is garbouche, but it's
Hmm.
redeemable. Like you could fix it,
Hmm.
right? And so it's nice to see them when the paper is garbouche and it just works its way up to like excellence. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful. But like the reading it when it's garbouche, so
Hmm.
it's not
Hmm.
fun, but it's cool.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I want to bounce back for a second. You mentioned a couple times your business before you started teaching. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
It was just like beauty stuff. It
Okay.
was like I started like when YouTube, the natural hair movement. I don't know if you're familiar with the natural hair movement.
We've talked
Um,
about it
okay.
before. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, nice.
From you, yes.
All right. So it was like when the natural hair movement was like really booming and taking its legs, and like black girls all over the world was like learning to care for their hair independently without using harsh chemicals and products that were harmful to us, our bodies, our hair.
Mhm.
And so like YouTube had this beautiful natural hair community, and we watch all these videos of YouTubers who made their own products or like concoctions and, cared for their hair. And so like I jumped on the bandwagon. I went natural and I started making my own products. And at the time, like now you can go into Walgreens and go into your beauty supply store and you'll see specific hair oils and hair products um, that cater to our hair texture
Hmm.
as Black women. But prior to that, not all stores had those options and ingredients. So my business was like, I some of the early products that weren't disposable that weren't available to us. I sold them. And I made my own products and I did hair consultation. I had, I had an idea and I got the product, the tool, the hair tool patented. So I got a design patent on that. So that was what I did. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of researching. It was, I don't know, it was nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So, Dr. Charles, you are very, very recently Dr. Charles. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your PhD and your research concentration before we talk a little bit more about that whole process of you getting it and all that?
Okay. So it's an EDD, it's doctorate in education. And so I'm a doctor of practice. Um, my research, and it circles back to what we talked about earlier when you said, what was it like? Basically me as a career changer,
Hmm.
just being thrusted into teaching without that sort of formal background, right? So that actually stayed with me, and I wanted to look at that and explore that. So my focus was on teacher retention, and I what I looked at was I looked at how our pathways into teaching sort of informed our commitment and our career choice satisfaction. So in public schools, you have to be certified.
Hmm.
You can't be like a non-certified career changer in a public school. In
Hmm.
charter schools, same thing. You're required to, but independent schools, um, believe it or not, you don't have to be a certified teacher. You can have a business degree and be really good at business and then teach middle school math. You know what I mean? As long as you're
Hmm.
a great teacher. And so Wheeler was really, and other independent schools like it, um, we we have these great teachers. So like in 2019, despite me not being certified, I was a presidential nominated like teacher, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I came in 2017. No idea what I was doing. But yeah, like presidential nomination, right? So it
Yeah,
was just like,
it's incredible.
but I didn't want to leave the field of education.
Hmm.
But then I knew other teachers who were certified and they were out,
Yeah.
right? And so like I wanted to look at to see if our pathways into education um inform those choices later on down the line. So I looked at career change teachers, teachers who did a graduated from college and did were in another career field for 2 or more years, and then transitioned into teaching without ever being certified. And then teachers who went to college for education,
Hmm.
they came out certified and went directly into teaching without any without trying any other careers or any other jobs. And I looked at their career choice satisfaction and their level of commitment to remaining in the field of education in independent schools. And that's what my research was on. And it was, it was largely influenced by my own experience as a career changer.
That's awesome. What did you find? What were the findings in the research?
Oh, honey. I'll give you an analogy. This is what came up in
Okay.
a focus group. So what we find is that, okay, before I say do that, I'll say career changers, a lot of times they go into the teaching profession looking for a sense of purpose. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It's
Hmm.
not really about the money. It's about like stability and a sense of purpose because you have a lot of career changers who, at least the ones I've interviewed, who were like screenwriters in like Hollywood or like, like they came from
Sure.
really cool jobs, Wall Street, but here they
Hmm.
come and they're teaching math, you
Hmm.
know? It was really not for the money, but it was just like for that sense of purpose and fulfillment and whatnot. And so like what it was said in a focus group was really interesting because they were like, well, teachers who are certified, it's like marrying your high school sweetheart. You
Hmm.
dated them in high school. You're like, this is it. This is for me. I know exactly what I want, and I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then time passes, and even though you're in this like comfortable, healthy, committed relationship, you start fantasizing about the possibilities of what might be out there for you
Hmm.
and what you could have potentially missed, but you never, for many certified teachers, they never explore and they're like, okay, I'm going to stay where I'm at, but a lot do. They're like, okay, on to the next, right?
Hmm.
Whereas the career changers, not to say that career changers don't leave the teaching profession, but what you find is career changers, a lot of them say, you're the ones who didn't marry your high school sweetheart. You went out and you dated. You dated a crap load of people. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh,
And you were
uh-huh.
out there and you realize the water is not wine. And you're like, okay, it's time to settle down. And I found someone and I know this is what I want because I know how I felt when I was out there exploring and doing this other thing. And so
Hmm.
I'm here and I'm making a conscious choice to be here and I'm married to the game. So that's my findings in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I really appreciate the analogy. Okay, that's great. And it's kind of funny too that the goal of this is to explore the goal of this, like as a show in general, is to talk about exploring nonlinear career paths. And you surprised me because I did not realize that your research was quite literally about teachers with nonlinear career paths.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay. Okay. So what drove you to go get the PhD? You're a teacher, you're having a lot of success, a lot of satisfaction. What led you to get the PhD?
Oh,
Or the
okay.
EDD. Sorry, is it an EDD? Is that the official
Same
tip?
thing, doctorates.
Okay, okay, okay,
Um,
okay. Got it.
so I was teaching English. Talk about
Hmm.
all over the place.
Hmm.
Um, and I think teaching is great for me because I love to be creative. I don't I like to change my mind. I like to explore. Um, and it allows me to do all of that, right? So I was teaching
Hmm.
English, and as I was teaching English, I linked up with Miss Thomas. Shout out to Miss Thomas, who was teaching history
Hmm.
at the time. And we I was like doing research about this thing because again, I was doing this class called this English elective called Maps and Migrations. And it's your baby. As an English teacher, you get to teach this
Hmm.
thing at our school, like that you really care about. And you create, like, right? And I went down the rabbit hole because I was teaching the book, and mind you, I selected the book, right? I was
Hmm.
teaching Malcolm X. And I went down the rabbit hole and I just like got into the history and like all these things. And again, one of the things that happens is like, for me, it was like credibility, right?
Hmm.
Here I am, this English teacher, but I'm going to provide a lot of historical context.
Yeah.
And I might say some things that might get some pushback, right?
Hmm.
And so like I taught it. It was great. It was wonderful. But then I was like, Miss Thomas, one time we were chopping it up after school one time and taking notes and really being nerds, talking about Malcolm X and a bunch of stuff. And then I was like, you should teach it with me. You should teach maps and migrations with me. She was like, I would love to teach it with you. What the re first reason why I loved our chemistry. I like I was like that would be so cool to have um students witness this. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What we just did. Just vibing and you know riffing off of each other intellectually, pushing back, interrogating, grappling
Hmm.
with content, you know what I mean? And I thought that was really cool. And also because she was a history teacher, I was like, it'll give me the stamp of like approval in terms of credibility.
Sure.
And she was like, yeah, for sure. That's a long story in and of itself, but she ends up the following year teaching maps and being my co-teacher in maps and migration. And it was a great time. We had a great time and it was beautiful for students to see. And there was then I decided I want to go back to school because I want to teach history. Like this is so cool. And I did. I went back to school and I got a master's in African American Studies. And I did have the opportunity to switch gears and teach English and history. So that was cool. And it just like helped strengthen me as an English teacher too, because again, I value depth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Quality. And also I try to tell kids, I'm not here to indoctrinate you. You have a brain to think, so think. You don't always
Hmm.
have to agree with me. Push
Hmm.
back. Just make sure you have textual evidence, you know? And so I did that. And then in that program, my master's thesis, it was not to toot my own horn. It was a really
Please do.
good one. It was a good one. It was great.
Great.
I ended up finding a mistranslation um in the a misunderstanding in the Buchmann prayer, it's called. So
Okay.
basically during the Haitian Revolution, there was a prayer that was said, and there was like the ceremony, and there's just like this great divide between like Haitians who are Christians and Haitians who practice African traditional religion on the island. And when I went back, and did all this research and looked at primary sources, I found like there was a misunderstanding. And through my paper, I walked readers through, first of all, the historiography and just like 10 to 20 years prior to the revolution, like where these Africans were being, um, outsourced from, and their sort of religious beliefs and based on like their regions and all that stuff, and like bringing them
Hmm.
to that ceremony and just kind of like unpacking, right, and
Yeah.
deconstructing. And it was a really great thesis statement. I'm not thesis statement, thesis.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I got to work with John Thornton, Dr. John Thornton, who's just like a giant in his field and just a brilliant, brilliant scholar, a brilliant teacher. Man, I learned so much under him. Um, and also like I got to take um English classes too. And I got to work with Dr. Shudi Soki, and I still teach his book that he published in my I cha Maps and Migrations. I changed the title now to Literature of Immigrant Communities, and he has a memoir called Floating in a Most Peculiar Way. Definitely check it out. And I still teach it. Like Paula, Dr. Austin, like I at Boston University in that program, I met so many amazing um professors, and they challenged me, and it was just incredible. And I loved that experience so much that I was like, okay, like I want to continue.
Hmm.
And I saw myself as an intellectual. I saw myself as a scholar, and I knew there was so much more I wanted to do um in the field of education. And I was very fortunate because that specific doctoral program that um opens up every 3 years. And so that program actually opened up right when I was done with my program in African American
Perfect.
Studies. And so I was able to apply to it. And so like that's really it. I just like I really immersed myself into everything education. like everything education. Like it was beyond just teaching. On my free time, I'm reading like scholarly articles and anything that I can that tells me about history, education, English. Like I was all over. I was in
Yeah.
it. And yeah, I working at Wheeler, I fell in love with teaching and I fell in love with education. And growing up the way I grew up, going to the schools I went to, um, having been an undocumented immigrant, having parents who, my parents didn't have college degrees. I'm self-taught in a lot of ways. I used to skip school. I went to Hope. I used to skip school to go to the College Hill bookstore on Thayer Street, and that's when I was introduced to writers like James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, like Edwidge Dancy Cat, all of that. I was self-taught in a lot of it. So I was ditching school with my friend to read books, right? Um, and it's so beautiful that like um here I am. I'm not only a teacher, I'm an educator.
Hmm.
And I love, you know, just like connecting with other educators, people who are sold out and passionate about education and about who genuinely care not only for the material, but for the students. And in
Yeah.
interviewing people for my, dissertation, like teachers in independent schools, yeah, you'll find here and there teachers who just like whatever, but for the most part, they care about the students. And also, I care about the institution, and I want to always advocate and champion for better and education and quality education because my thing is every kid deserves a Wheeler education,
Yeah.
so that's why. I don't know if I answered the question, but
No, you 100% did. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So my next question is, you're talking about this transitioning from just being a teacher to being an educator, going for your PhD. How on earth did you manage all this with also two children and being a full-time teacher? How did you manage your time there?
oh, okay, discipline.
Okay.
Discipline, um, a community, like a village. I didn't do it by myself. So I'm fortunate. I live right down the street from my parents. A hop and a skip, literally right down the street from my parents. Um, my mom and my dad are here. Excuse me, so that's a blessing. So therefore, free babysitter. You don't have to feel guilty about like leaving your kid there because it's like it's grandma and grandpa, right? And they're both
Hmm.
retired. So this was like a wonderful time to do it. Also, while they're there, I can like be there too. So they're off doing their own thing. My parents' house is like, there's so much to do and so much to explore. And so like they're off doing their thing but I'm there
Hmm.
even while I'm working. So that was a major thing. Um, I had I had the drive, I had the volition. I wanted it badly, and part of it was because no one in my family. I'm the only person in my family with who has a who had a master's degree. Everybody like bachelors and stuff like,
Hmm.
and I was be the I wanted to model that for my kids because when I was growing up, I didn't know anyone personally who
Hmm.
had a college degree. Like I didn't know a grown up in my inner circle who graduated from college because I'm first generation. My parents, so it's like
Yeah.
they were they did very well for themselves. Like,
Hmm.
like my dad was a school bus driver, my mom was a certified nursing assistant. They purchased many homes. And so like they did very well for themselves. Um, they worked really hard, but in my community, we had a very close knit church community, and the whole idea was we may not have a college education, but we're going to instill in our children the importance of education because this next generation is going to take over and they're going to be the educated. Um, they're going to break
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
barriers. And actually, now, just what they envisioned came to pass because now we
Yeah.
have teachers, we have lawyers, we have politicians, we have like everybody is
Yeah.
educated, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Everyone is educated. And so and so, but I didn't know anyone
Mhm.
personally growing up who had a college degree. And so it was important for me, for my kids to have that sort of role model,
Yeah.
So my mom's a doctor, my dad's a doctor, it was important for them to see someone in their family go all the way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that was very important for me to do. And so that gave me sort of the drive. And just in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna cross that stage whenever there were many crash outs, many. Sometimes it would be in the Wheeler Library. So Joanne was always crying somewhere. She was stressed out and crying. Then she would wipe her tears and she would go teach a class and be really happy. So and it was about, if I said, okay, I'm gonna grade these papers for 3 hours, I have to grade them for 3 hours. If I'm gonna take a
Mhm.
nap during my lunch break, I have to take that nap so I can have time
Yeah.
the rest of my day to do whatever. And also the program that I was in was designed um for working professionals because it was a doctorate in
Okay.
education.
Okay.
And so there was that. And so yeah, and in the end, thank God I was able to cross that stage with two of my kids, Grace and Isaac. I had one in each hand as they hooded me. And
That's incredible.
hopefully they'll never forget that. Knock on
That
wood.
was knock on wood. Sure. Okay. So this ties in perfectly to what you were just talking about, but I want to talk about really directly as well. How has your background and your upbringing affected and continue to affect some of your career decisions throughout your career, not just necessarily your decision to get your PhD?
Um, everything,
Okay.
everything. My resistance to enter the field of education was because of my background,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
was like, if you grow up broke, you don't want a career that's gonna make you broke, you know? Um,
Yeah.
Uh, so there was that. And then again, I grew up in a community where the importance of education, it was instilled in us. It's like education, there's no maybe I'll go get a college degree. It's like you're going to. So figure
Hmm.
out which degree you're gonna get, right? So
Hmm.
so there's that. So I because my parents wanted to make sure that they gave us, because they couldn't help us with our homework. There were no landmarks, shared landmarks. Like I could
Hmm.
drive to school with my daughter and she'll be like, oh, my mom went to high school there. Oh, my mom went to middle school there. I didn't have that with my parents because
Yeah.
they grew up in Haiti, and St. Martin. And so therefore, um, they couldn't help me with my homework. So when my dad would help me with my math homework, their way of doing long division was so different from the way we were taught and I'd be like, no, you're doing it wrong. But it's like he wasn't doing it wrong. It was just a
Uh-huh.
different way.
Yeah.
And then he had a strong accent. So it's like reading to me in English was not an option, right? But I would read to him. And so I remember my parents, we couldn't watch television, right? They made it hard for us to watch television, but we had a
Mhm.
lot of books. And I fell in love with literature, um, because we were constantly reading, and we didn't have phones and devices like you kids have now. So we didn't
Mhm.
have a choice, right? Um, and so all of these things played a role, me going to public schools. I went to private school early on in my formative years. So
Mhm.
I did pre-K, I did kindergarten, I did, all those years in private schools. My parents didn't have much money, but they made sure I got that. early education at a private school because they understood it was important to have a solid foundation. Not to say that all public schools are bad. That's not what I want to say.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I remember in middle school, I wanted to go to Wheeler. I wanted, I couldn't. They couldn't afford it. But and then having to go to Hope, and it was like an underperforming school at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and believe it or not, like skipping school saved my life because I would not have learned half of these things
Yeah.
had I gone to English class the way I was supposed to. Sadly, and so like all of these things, they inform how I teach. They inform how I relate to students, like having teachers that you could not relate to because they weren't human. So being
Hmm.
human is important to me because you learn from people you like and for people who sees you and feel like they understand you. So like if you're drowning and you didn't do your work, you procrastinated instead of running away from me, you're more apt to be like, Dr. Charles, I didn't do much, and we'll work
Yeah.
it out. I'm not gonna be so lenient all the time, but like we can work it out. And I think that's my experiences inform that aspect of me, understanding community, understanding representation, how literature should be give you windows and mirrors, right? So every kid, I look at the kids in the class and I said, does everybody have a window in a mirror at some point to
Hmm.
reflect their own experience? Um, and just like me understanding how powerful education is. It's a key for, especially for kids in the inner city
Hmm.
who don't come from a background where the people in their lives are educated or have money. Education
Hmm.
is a way out, and it informs everything that I do. It to the point of being at Wheeler, how every time there's a graduation, teachers they walk out in their regalia. And after the graduates or before the graduates, one of them, I don't know, if you
Hmm.
graduated, you wouldn't.
I was
Um,
at my sister's graduation like a month ago, and I don't unfortunately remember.
remember, well, we walk out in our regalia.
Uh-huh.
And it bothered me that there was no like when there was very few teachers of color with their doctoral regalia, and it was really important to me to provide that representation, especially when I heard students of color note that. They said, "How come we don't have?" And I said, "Okay, I'm going to change." So yes, my background, my upbringing, my experiences inform everything that I do.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Okay. So this almost feels a little foolish to ask, but what is next for you? And you can interpret this however you'd like, whatever in whatever way. What's next?
I don't know.
Of
There's so
course,
many
yeah, yeah, for
things.
sure.
I definitely, um, obviously, like as an English teacher, I definitely want to finish my novel. I think I mentioned that to you before.
Hmm.
And also, right now, I'm working on curriculum because I want to continue the work that I've done before,
Hmm.
um, in like teaching kids. Before I in the city of Pawtucket, I would work with students independently, kind of like teach them writing and mentor them and tutor them in that respect and regard.
Hmm.
And so right now I kind of want to start my own programming, summer programming,
That's awesome.
where all students, whether you're in the independent schools, charter schools, public schools, you can come to my writing camp and I'm gonna get you right. You're gonna learn how to write analytical essays and get ready for the next year. So, um, so far, that's what I'm working on. But who knows where this leads me? I definitely want to um, do more advocacy
Yeah,
um, for education and inclusion and stuff like that in education. But for now, that's what I'm looking at.
It's incredible. It all comes back to not wanting to grade essays and spend 2 hours on them to make them. But no, that's really, I don't mean to minimize what you're doing at all. That's really incredible. Um, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything with me. It's been truly incredible. It's been
Thank
awesome.
you.
Is there anything that you want to share or promote or any sort of way to kind of wrap this up?
Um, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You only got one life. I'll tell it to the viewers. You only got one life, and this is not a dress rehearsal. Somebody said it somewhere, and I picked it up and ran with it, right? Um, and so like this really isn't a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
This you're living it out once, and then that's it. And so like it's okay to start all over. It's okay to take detours. It's okay to fail. It's okay to pick yourself back up. And it's definitely okay to change your mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do things that you love, do things that you're passionate about. I could have stumbled on education, but not be passionate about it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But I love it. I'm passionate about it. And so therefore I'm able to do all the things that I'm doing and you know, and move forward because I'm passionate about it. But also, like, I took a bunch of detours. We didn't really get into that, but like a bunch of detours. I went to
Yeah.
different schools. I instead of getting the degree in biotech, I ended up with the certification. Like so many different things. And I've changed my mind along the way. I reinvented myself. I did business. Then I stopped. Like,
Yeah.
so therefore
I've
it's
had,
like,
oof.
right? It's like, um, it's like you might not get into the school of your dreams, but you can certainly transfer in. You might not get into a program at this particular time, but maybe you can apply again. You might not get in ever. Maybe you want to be a neurosurgeon and it's just not your calling. It's okay.
Mm.
It's okay. Find your, it
Okay.
might be something else. Be okay with the pivot, you know?
Sure.
And And there's a difference. Lastly, there's a difference between a job and a career. And, you don't have to necessarily love your job. If you can't, if you do, it's great. But
Hmm.
a career is something that you choose. So choose something and find out how to make money with it.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much. This conversation's been incredible. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Appreciate you, Nick.
If you have any comments, questions, feedback, or suggestions for who I should talk to next, shoot me an email at nick@reroutedpod.com. The address and links to our Instagram and LinkedIn pages can be found in the description below. Be sure to stay tuned for future releases. This is Nicholas Karamanian. I hope you enjoyed the show.